My name is Sarah. I'm 28 years old, and my heart nearly pounded out of my chest when a tall man in an expensive suit blocked my path. Just 3 days ago, I handed a heavy bag containing $50,000 back to a sobbing homeless man on the freezing streets of Boston. I thought my good deed was over, but as this intimidating lawyer handed me a sealed document, I realized my choice was about to. It all started on a bitter Tuesday evening in late November. The wind was howling through the narrow alleys. I was walking home from my double shift at a local diner. My feet were aching and my mind was heavy with worry. The rent was due in exactly 3 days. I lived in a tiny, cramped apartment on the edge of the city. I shared it with my best friend, Jessica. She is 29 years old and works as a cashier at a grocery store. We were both drowning in bills. That night, I found a pink eviction warning taped to our front door. I walked inside feeling completely defeated. Jessica was sitting at the small kitchen table staring blankly at a pile of unpaid utility bills. She looked up at me, her eyes red and puffy from crying. We did not even need to speak. The paper in my hand said it all. "Sarah, what are we going to do?" Jessica whispered, her voice trembling. "We have nowhere else to go." I sat down across from her, rubbing my exhausted face. I told her I would pick up more shifts, even though I was already working 60 hours a week. It felt hopeless. I needed fresh air to clear my head, so I told her I was going for a short walk. The cold hit me like a wall of ice as I stepped outside. I wrapped my coat tighter and walked to the deserted park. The streetlights flickered, casting eerie shadows on the fresh snow. That was when I saw it. An old, worn-out green duffel bag was sitting on the bench. It looked completely abandoned. I looked around, but there was no one in sight. I approached the bench slowly, my breath forming white clouds in the freezing air. I nudged it slightly. Curiosity got the better of me, and I unzipped the top just a little to peek inside the dark space. My heart stopped completely. Inside, stacked perfectly in tight bundles, were $100 bills. I gasped out loud and stumbled backwards, slipping on the pavement. I couldn't believe my eyes. It had to be fake money. Who leaves a massive fortune on a park bench? I looked around frantically in the dark. Panic started to set in. Were there hidden cameras? Was someone watching me from the shadows? I zipped the bag shut quickly. I didn't know what else to do, so I grabbed the heavy straps and ran back to my tiny apartment. I burst through the door, locking the deadbolt behind me. Jessica jumped up from the table, startled by my entrance. I dropped the bag on the floor with a loud thud. She asked me what was wrong and why I was breathing so heavily. I silently pointed to the bag. "Open it," I managed to say, struggling to catch my breath. Jessica looked confused but knelt down. When she pulled the zipper back, she let out a piercing, terrified scream. We both stared at the mountain of cash. It felt like we were trapped in a crazy movie. We dumped the contents onto the cheap rug and counted it twice with trembling fingers. It was exactly $50,000. Jessica looked at me with wild, desperate eyes. "Sarah, this is an absolute miracle," she said. "This pays our rent. This pays our debts. We are saved." For a brief, intoxicating moment, I agreed with her. All our problems could vanish tonight. No more double shifts, no more crying over aggressive eviction notices. But then, an overwhelming sense of intense guilt washed over me. This money belonged to someone. Someone might be dying for it. I started digging through the bottom of the empty bag. There had to be an ID, a receipt, anything to tell me who dropped this fortune. My fingers brushed against a small, crumpled piece of paper hidden in a side pocket. It was a faded photograph of a little girl wrapped inside a terrifying hospital bill. The bill was addressed to an Arthur Jenkins. It was a final notice from an oncology center. The amount due was exactly $50,000. My stomach dropped to the floor. I handed the paper to Jessica. All the color drained from her face as she read the words. "This is not a drug deal or dirty money," I told her, tears welling in my tired eyes right then. "This is someone's absolute last hope." Jessica started crying too. She pushed the money away from her as if it were burning her skin. "We cannot keep this, Sarah," she sobbed loudly. "We just cannot." I knew she was right, but finding him in a big city felt impossible. The address on the bill was a homeless shelter downtown. I packed every single bill back into the green duffel bag. I did not sleep a single second that night. My mind was racing wildly. The next morning, I called my boss and begged for the morning off immediately. He was furious, but I did not care at all. I grabbed the heavy bag and took the bus downtown. The shelter was a grim, gray building surrounded by desperate people shivering in the brutal frost. I walked up to the front desk and asked the volunteer about Arthur. She sighed and said he no longer had a bed inside. She pointed toward an alleyway across the street. "He usually sleeps near the steam vents," she told me with a deeply sad look. I crossed the busy street, clutching the bag tightly against my chest to protect it. The smell of garbage and damp cardboard filled the alley. Huddled in a corner, wrapped in dirty blankets, was a frail, older man. His face was weathered and he was weeping uncontrollably in the shadows. I approached him slowly. "Excuse me, are you Arthur?" I asked. He looked up. His eyes were completely hollow, filled with a despair so deep it broke my heart. He nodded slowly. "I am Arthur," he whispered. "I am 65 years old, and I lost everything that mattered to me today." I knelt down on the dirty concrete right in front of him. I unzipped the bag just enough for him to see inside. His eyes widened in absolute shock. He let out a loud, agonizing wail and grabbed the bag, pulling it to his chest as if it were a fragile newborn child. "Where did you find this?" he cried out in pure disbelief. I told him about the park bench. He explained that he had been living on the streets to save every penny from a settlement he won after a terrible accident. He was supposed to pay for his granddaughter's cancer treatment this very morning, but he had been brutally mugged. The thieves took his backpack and left the heavy duffel bag behind. He had wandered away in a massive panic, completely disoriented by the freezing cold, and lost track of where he left it. Arthur grabbed my hands. His hands were freezing, rough, and covered in dirt. He kissed my knuckles over and over again, hot tears streaming down his face. "You are an angel," he sobbed. "You saved my little girl's life. I will never forget you, never in my entire life." I cried with him right there in that dirty alley. I did not want a reward. Seeing the pure relief in his eyes was worth more than all the money in the world. I helped him get up, and I walked him to the hospital. I watched him proudly pay the bill at the dizzy cashier desk. I walked home that afternoon with an empty bank account and peace. When I got to my apartment, Jessica was anxiously waiting. She hugged me tight. "We're still getting evicted," she said, trying to smile through her pain. "But we did the right thing." I nodded silently. The next 2 days were incredibly difficult and stressful for us. Jessica and I started packing our meager belongings into cardboard boxes. The deadline was approaching fast. We ate cheap noodles and tried to figure out which friends might let us sleep on their couches. On the third day, a loud, unexpected knock came at the door. I thought it was the angry landlord coming to throw us out. My hands shook as I slowly turned the doorknob. But it was not the landlord. It was a tall man in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit holding a sleek black leather briefcase. He asked if my name was Sarah. I nodded cautiously. He introduced himself as Mr. Davis. He said he was 52 years old and an attorney representing a very grateful client. I was entirely confused. I told him I did not have any money to pay for legal fees or anything else right now. He smiled kindly. He asked if he could come inside. Jessica stood behind me, looking just as bewildered. Mr. Davis sat on our worn-out sofa and opened his briefcase. He pulled out a thick, sealed envelope and placed it gently on our small, scratched wooden coffee table between us. "My client, Arthur Jenkins, asked me to find you," Mr. Davis explained. I gasped loudly. Arthur? Is he okay? Is his sweet granddaughter okay? I asked rapidly. The lawyer nodded, his smile widening. Thanks to you, the surgery was a complete success. She's recovering. I felt a massive wave of intense relief wash over me. Thank God, I whispered. But why are you here? Mr. Davis leaned forward. Arthur is not just a homeless man, Sarah. He is the former owner of a massive logistics company in the Midwest. I stared in utter disbelief. He lost everything after a severe mental breakdown following his wife's tragic death, the lawyer continued. He chose to live on the streets. The money you found was just a tiny fraction of his actual wealth. Arthur has been completely lucid since the successful surgery. Your act of pure honesty completely restored his faith in humanity. He has decided to take back control of his vast estate, and his first official act was to ensure that the woman who saved his family is safe. Mr. Davis pushed the thick envelope toward my shaking hands. Open it, he urged gently. My fingers were trembling so badly I could barely tear the thick paper. Inside was a certified bank check. I pulled it out and stared at the numbers. It was a check for $250,000. I dropped the paper in shock. Jessica leaned over to look, and she let out a loud gasp. This cannot be real, I stammered. It is very real, Mr. Davis assured me warmly. Arthur also purchased this building. You and Jessica can stay here rent-free for as long as you wish. You are family to him now. I broke down completely. I fell to my knees, sobbing loudly. Jessica knelt beside me, crying just as hard. The crushing weight of poverty, the constant fear of tomorrow, it was all gone in a single instant. Doing the right thing saved my life when I least expected it. Honesty is a difficult choice. I could have kept that money. It would have solved my problems, but it would have destroyed a family. Would you have the strength to return a fortune if you were facing eviction? I hope you never have to find out. Until the next story.